Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Can you read one of these texts that we have? Just let me finish our business here, because I've got a lot going on here. So
you're getting ripped.
I know. All of our guests today, Thomas Drance standing by, brought to you by Alberni Power and Marine. It is Wednesday. Alberni Power and Marine RPM Group, located in Port Alberni. Alberni Power and Marine is one of Vancouver Island's most trusted boat dealerships, the largest Mercury Marine dealership in Canada. Their service team just won for a fourth straight year a CSI score above the national average. Make your appointment for the 2022 boating season at albernipowermarine.com. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox.
Reminding you that Donnie also said, did the Canucks get a break regarding his 3-year contract? That's from Nate.
Okay. I'm okay. It's okay.
People have good memories, and they remember.
I know I'm not the only one who was questioning a lot of things when it came to EP40, but lately, fabulous. Canucks defeat Vegas 5-4 in overtime. EP40, Elias Pettersson with 3 points. Here to talk about it. As always, Thomas Drance from The Athletic. How are you, sir? I should say, as always, again, I'm all mixed up. We have Friday off. Yeah. It's Wednesday, so not as always, but he is here, back from vacation. How are you?
Here to join the chorus of I Told You So's, Thomas Drance from The Athletic.
Okay, tell me. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
You were totally fair, I think, to be questioning Elias Pettersson's game in the first month of the season. I think he himself has said it took him longer than he wanted to get back and feeling fully functional after the injury. I think there was more going on there too, pretty clearly, that it was impacting both him and the entire team in the first 25 games of the year. And for all of that, gentlemen, I looked up the stat today just because I was fascinated by it. But how's this for a mind bender, a test of perception? The 23 games we're talking about Elias Pettersson having 32 points in, right?
Yep.
Mind-bending stuff. The toast of the town, right? At 5-on-5 anyway, over that stretch, and it's really a 25-game stretch for the Canucks, 23 appearances for Elias Pettersson. 14 of those points have come at 5-on-5. You know who has 15 points at 5-on-5 over that stretch?
Who?
Connor Garland.
Wow.
And think about the gap in perception between those two gentlemen, right? One thing I would suggest to you, too, is Connor Garland getting some of the arrows that were perhaps directed EP40's way in the fall, maybe playing a little better than we're understanding. Certainly, I thought he did on that line with Horvat and Pettersson last night.
Yeah, and it was nice to see him out in overtime as well. People have been waiting for that. Thomas, why is it that Elias Pettersson seems to be, at this point anyway, more effective on the wing versus center?
Yeah, I don't really have a great answer for you, but I do find it interesting that he moved back to the wing following the 2 games that he missed with, an apparent wrist injury, right? I read a lot into that personally, gentlemen. So, I think he's been effective both at center and on the wing this season. I think the move to the wing, remember on that Florida road trip when he first moved to the wing just for 2 games and then Bo Horvat and they had a run of people in COVID protocol. He moved back to center, and that's really where he got his season back on track. I think it helped him in that instance to just see the game a little bit differently. I wouldn't say that right now, in my view, he's playing better on the wing than he is at center. I think Elias Pettersson can do both. I think he can do both really well. I think at the end of the day, he is better in the middle of the ice where he can think a little bit more, take advantage of some of the thinking elements of his game, maybe be a little bit less exposed to some of the weaknesses of his game along the wall. I like him better at center. I think he's a long-term fit at center. And I think for the long-term health of this franchise, he needs to be their number 1 center.
Thomas, when injuries hit, they got 6 guys out. Certain guys got to step up. and a couple of guys who have stepped up. Chason, it's really nice because guess what? Boeser, Hoglander, or Pearson out. You need that production with those guys out. He stepped up. Podkolzin, power play goal last night. How wonderful was that? He's getting power play time. What about these two stepping up in a crucial time?
I mean, huge for the Canucks, and then also poses a pretty interesting question, Rick, about what to do next season, particularly regarding Chason, who came to town on a PTO. He's sort of a PTO specialist. He knows the game. He constantly gets work, and he constantly gets work because he's a professional. He's got a big body. He knows how to use it. He can produce, and he's excellent at the net front on the power play. And yet, Rick, I think the emergence of Podkolzin over the course of the past couple of games, and particularly his work at the net front, sort of poses an interesting quandary for Canucks management as they wait, the idea of do you want to retain Chason, a player who's clearly fit in really well and stepped up when you needed it, or is it really important actually to keep a spot open at the net front for Podkolzin to hold down that role next season and begin to learn how to produce in a really high leverage spot at the NHL level? I mean, for me, it's a really interesting question, a really fascinating set of variables to weigh, because I'm watching Podkolzin make power moves. I'm watching him win battles. I'm watching that size, those hands, the shot. I don't know that he's got that dynamic level of offensive creativity where you're going to put him on the flanks on the power play, but I definitely think he can do the job at the net front. And if he's going to be really good there, if he's going to get really good there, gentlemen, he's going to need reps. Don't you need to keep a spot open for him to do just that next season? It's a fascinating sort of thing to watch.
Yeah. Interesting text into our Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. Thomas, you've talked about this many times. They're still getting outshot bad. You love the win, but they're relying on the all-world goaltender. That's not a long-term recipe for success. Your thoughts on that? They didn't have a shot on goal, Thomas, till the 15-minute mark of the third period.
Well, the thing that really bothered me about that, Rick, is that I was watching the game. Like, I don't think last night was a Demko win, right? You have two really
but
bad
they were
bounces.
badly outshot. Badly outshot.
But for me, it was more about the power play, right?
Yeah.
And then the Elias Pettersson show in the second period.
Yeah.
And yet I'm watching that game last night, in Southern California, by the fire, glass of red, enjoying myself.
Okay, all right. Move on. Yeah.
And I'm watching it, and I'm watching Robin Lehner. And I just thought he looked lost, gentlemen, right? Like, I thought he looked lost.
Yeah.
Robin Lehner's a very good goaltender. I'm not ladling criticism on him or suggesting that this is going to be his form the rest of the way, but it was his second game back after a lengthy injury layoff. He's one of the most consistent starters in the NHL, and last night was not his night, and I guarantee you, if you talk to him about it, he'd be the first to admit it. He didn't look like he was tracking the puck well. He was almost never in position. I have no idea what he was doing on the play where Tyler Myers hit the crossbar, right? I mean, the goals that the Canucks were scoring, it didn't look like he had a chance on them some of the time. And obviously that Elias Pettersson goal in the second period, it was, I've started calling them bald spot goals, because when they get scored, every coach on both benches is just looking down, right? Like, what's going on? So you see their bald spots. It's a bald spot goal, and that's a bad goal for on Robin Lehner, who really looked lost. This team didn't test him for 15 minutes of the third period.
Yeah,
like if you want to list the reasons why the Canucks lost ground, and they did lose ground, right? Like, that's the worst part about this. They're winning 4-2 against the Vegas Golden Knights. They end up losing the lead before the end of regulation. So Vegas gets a point, which that's not ideal. The Canucks still get the win, and yet because LA won in regulation, they now have more regulation wins than the Canucks. So it's not really a 6-point gap. It's a 7-point gap because they hold the tiebreaker now. They didn't going into last night's slate as a result of the Canucks coughing up the lead. They lose they lose some of their lead to the Dallas Stars, who won in regulation and are now just one regulation win back. That's the tiebreaker. So you're just 6 points back at Dallas. And you don't pick up that extra heft against Vegas, who you're still 3 points back on, in terms of catching them in regulation wins. So they actually lost ground because they lost the lead last night in the playoff race. And they didn't test Lehner. Like, the best way to protect that lead was just take shots. Just take shots on a goalie who was clearly struggling. To go 15 minutes in that situation. And I don't think Vegas played exceptionally well in that third period. Like, they didn't have a ton of quality looks. I'd say Vancouver locked it down pretty effectively, to be totally honest with you, in the third period. I thought they were unfortunate to have 2 goals scored against them. But the best way to protect that lead was to play Boudreau hockey and go on the offensive and attack a goaltender who did not look like he had his net. To not do that last night, that was a little bit galling. That was a little bit concerning for me. I really didn't like that part of Vancouver's performance.
Apparently, you and I have both had a lot of goals scored against us, Thomas.
Why?
Well, he's bald spot goal.
Bald spot.
Bald
spot. Bald spot.
I threw myself. I threw myself under the bus as well. Okay. Hey, Thomas, we could go on and on with you. There's so many issues that the power play is more effective. But let's finish. Brilliant. Let's finish with this. Do you think management is making any connection between the recent success and Brock Boeser's absence with his contract up?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I don't think they should. The recent success is, as it so often is with this Canucks team, based off of percentages and a run of sturdy goaltending, right? I mean, they've got 960 goaltending on this, or 950 goaltending on this 4-game win streak. They're shooting the lights out at something like 12.5%. Even the power play, the power play has been converting at 5-on-4 at almost a 19% clip, gentlemen, since Bruce Boudreau took over. There's so many things that are going in Vancouver's favor that are unlikely to be replicated. Like, I know that Vancouver has a ridiculous amount of finishing talent on the power play. Elias Pettersson sort of highlighting that list, but JT Miller too, also Bo Horvat, and then whoever's at the net front. But I think Brock Boeser's been a really good fit there, especially with his playmaking. And yet, over the last 5 seasons, 13 different teams, including Vancouver in 1920, have been top 5 teams in the NHL by power play shooting percentage. And what that tells you is that it's not really something teams do regularly. It's not something you repeat. You're not the best at it and then the best at it again. It's something that tends to be ephemeral. Brock Boeser does some of the things that Vancouver needs if they're going to get better. In particular, he's got a really high level of hockey IQ, wins battles on the wall, helps drive play, right? Helps you control play 5-on-5. This team doesn't control play well enough 5-on-5. And if you're looking at, a bunch of games where the Canucks are winning, even though they're not necessarily carrying play, and saying, oh, we're fine without Brock Boeser, I think you're making a mistake. And that's one of the fascinating parts about this team in general, gentlemen, is it's really hard to see it clearly, right? Because they struggled so badly for 25 games. And I think we knew at the time, too, that they were better than that. Like, they weren't that bad. But then, under Bruce Boudreau, they've been a 650 team. They've been on the fringes of the top 10 in the NHL. And it's tempting to just look at that and say, well, this is who they are now. They're actually fine under Bruce Boudreau. They're a playoff team. In fact, they're a couple pieces away from being an elite team. And yet, when I look at it and I look at how much of their success is based off of having the league's second best goaltending since Boudreau took over, first best goaltending overall this season, a run of power play shooting luck that they're unlikely to repeat next season, and the way that their shooting percentage has bounced back too at 5-on-5, I still see a team that's far too dependent on ephemeral factors, the power play, goaltending, and a run of individual performances, great individual performances, including last night, the one we saw from Elias Pettersson, as opposed to a team that's capable of, when the going gets tough and they're tired and things are stacked against them, being able to fall back on being a great team, a systems team, and winning in that manner. And so, if they're deciding that Brock Boeser is expendable because of this 4-game win streak, I think that would be a tremendous error. And honestly, I think as a corollary, I think if they're looking at the success under Bruce Boudreau and thinking we can run this back and do the same thing again next year, oh boy, I think we're in for another long season with people calling me negative.
Thomas?
You're not negative.
No, apparently I am. Thomas, thanks for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Cheers.